Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is a special meeting to approve a partial certification of the April 23rd, 2024 general primary election. All races except the representative in the General Assembly 117th District / Republican. It's a meeting of the Luzerne County Board of Elections and Registration. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll have roll call. Ms. Fusaro? Here. Mr. Morelli? Mr. Slosser? Mr. Schramm?
Here.
Ms. Williams? Here. All present. Is there a motion to adopt the special meeting agenda?
So moved.
By Ms. Fusaro. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Morelli. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? None heard? The agenda is adopted. We'll now move into public comment on agenda items. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the board on matters listed on the agenda. It's limited to 3 minutes and 1 comment time per person. We'll start with those who are in person. If there's anybody in person who'd like to speak, just raise your hand. I don't see any hands up. We'll move to the Zoom platform. There's one hand up. Mark, go ahead.
Madam Chair, this is Mark Rabo from Hazleton speaking. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I would like to thank the board and the Bureau of Elections for their arduous, tedious adjudication. I've witnessed it on 2 days. And I just have one suggestion for the upcoming November election for adjudication. And I spoke to Attorney Molino about this at one of the adjudications in the hallway with regards to if there's similar batches of ballots that have the same issues. I found it concerning when on one day you would accept one batch of ballots and then on the next day you would reject them. So I would make a suggestion, and I do believe this recommendation was made during the 2020 County Council Election Inquiry Committee, that you would keep a notation on a list that would be put into the Election Bureau manual, so that way future boards and bureaus administration officials can look back to see if there were similar problems or issues that you can refer back to. I think that would be a best practice to be put into place, so that way there would be no contention or appearance of political prejudice during the adjudication process. That's just a suggestion for future reference. Maybe you might want to look into that after this is all, the primary stuff is all done and over with, and you and the board can discuss that. Also, with regards to the certification, I would like to ask you, Madam Chair, to ask the solicitor if there was any precedence to segregate an individual race from the actual primary election, because I can't remember a time when there was an individual race that was segregated from the rest of the primary or general election. I do believe there is a federal case ruling from Bush versus Gore in the federal courts where they tried to segregate the presidential election because the congressional elections were already done and over with, and the Supreme Court justices, or was it the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, that actually said that the states could not segregate a individual race from the election. I think you might want to look into that, because that could present a problem, especially if there's a close election for the November election. I think that would be worth exploring before you do this certification because there might be an issue with the Department of State or with the Federal Election Commission. That's all I have, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands up online. So there's no one on a phone line. So we'll move into the agenda items now. The agenda item is one, it's partial certification of the April 23rd, 2024 general primary election, excluding representative in the General Assembly 117th District Republican race. It's on the agenda for discussion and board vote. I'll open it up to the board members for any discussion prior to the vote.
Madam Chair, can I jump in first?
Sure.
And just add something that I think is important for this agenda item. Aside from excluding the 117th contest, it also excludes the 14 challenge provisional ballots that were the subject of litigation. So I think that's important. I'm actually going to read directly from the first signing document, the second paragraph. This certification does not include the results for the contest of state representative in the 117th legislative district due to pending litigation in the Court of Common Pleas of Luzerne County. Further, the results from 14 challenge provisional ballots from the 117th legislative district are subject to pending litigation and are not included as part of this final certification. And the reason I make the point about the 14 provisionals, it will not change the outcome of any race besides potentially the 117th, but it will change votes in other races. And it's important for everyone to know that when you're making a certification, you're not just certifying a victor or a winner, you're certifying the vote itself. So for example, we know all of these provisionals are Republican ballots. So I'm only going to use the race at the top, President of the United States. We're certifying right now whatever results we have for president. Donald J. Trump received whatever, I don't know what it was, let's say 20,000 votes. Well, after these ballots are counted, which would only be 13 of them, not 14, the board voted to reject one, he might end up with 20,013. He still wins Luzerne County, but that number changes. So I just want to be crystal clear on that. It's not only the 117th that's excluded, but those provisionals are also excluded from the certification.
Yep.
And I might as well, as long as I'm speaking, just quickly address Mr. Rabo's comment. This is permitted. There is precedent across the state. There might even be other counties who are doing this right now, a partial. I don't know, but it has certainly happened before in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Counties have done partials. I know Allegheny, I actually saw an example from Allegheny County, and we received permission. The Department of State knows that we are doing a partial certification, and they will accept this partial certification.
Thank you. And I do want to make a real quick comment here that coming in this morning, I was a little bit concerned because I didn't get a chance to go over some of the places where the provisional ballots were and the committee races in there. So we handled that just to review really quick when I first got in here. Went over all of the numbers to make sure there's no committee races that would be affected in those where those provisional ballots are. There are none, not any of them, none of them. I think the highest we looked at were somebody had 2 votes in one of those areas. So that would not be affected at all either. So none of those races will be affected in any way whatsoever.
Any other board members? I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank Emily and Steve. I want to thank you for your leadership through and facilitation of the primary election. I came onto the board in April of 2021, and this was the best pre-election and election day process, post-election process that I've experienced during my time on the board. Your knowledge of all the election processes and all the time and effort you put in was very obvious and very commendable. I want to thank you both for always addressing all questions, and I know a lot of times I have many, and all concerns, but from all of us, not just me, in a most professional manner. Your leadership of the whole election team through it the poll workers, the administrative assistants, the election day workers, the rovers, was so very well done. I also recognize that Ramilda's support, guidance, and oversight has been a very big part of this success. She prioritizes evaluation and a culture of continued improvement. I have a great appreciation for all the work all of you have put in, and I am most grateful as a citizen and voter of the county. The Election Bureau is on very good and stable ground. It is in great hands with the leadership and now in place, and the team now has established policies, procedures, and standards of practice in place. Keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, if there's nothing else anybody has to say, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Morelli makes a motion would you like to approve?
the agenda item.
So
Approve the raise.
Eh.
Rate it out without the 117,
without the 117th and also excluding the 14
excluding the 14.
challenge provisional ballots. Is there a second?
I'll second the partial certification of the April 23rd, 2024 general primary election, excluding the representative in the General Assembly 117th District Republican race
And excluding the 14
and the 14 provisional ballots.
challenge provisionals.
Challenged
Okay.
provisional ballots.
Roll call vote. Mr. Morelli,
Yes.
Mr. Schlosser,
Yes.
Mr. Schramm,
Yes.
Ms. Fusaro,
Yes.
and Ms. Williams, yes. The motion passes unanimously for the partial certification of the April 23rd, 2024 general primary election, excluding the race for the representative in the General Assembly Legislative 117th District Republican race, and also excluding the 14 challenged provisional ballots. We'll now move into public comment on non-agenda items. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the board on matters not listed on the agenda, but which must be within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. We'll start with anyone who's in person who would like to speak. Just raise your hand. Oh, okay. Go ahead. Just state your name and municipality, please.
Jamie Walsh from Rouse Township. I just wanted to thank the board. I watched you for the last 3 weeks work tirelessly to keep things all in check and make sure I have a whole new appreciation for what you do as an unpaid position. I also wanted to, I've known Mr. Morelli for a long time. We've known each other through mini football. Actually, we were presidents of opposing teams for a period of time. And I noticed that, and certainly when you came on the board, you had no idea what this entailed, the commitment. And I noticed with a lot of absence, the board was down and really needed someone there. There were 20% of the effort up there is each individual. And I just want to make sure in the fall that we have a full board that's there as obviously as much as they possibly can. It's an unpaid position, but it's an important position. And I think we really need to make sure the fall is going to be crazy. There's going to be more mail-in ballots than ever. There's going to be a lot of pressure put on you. I don't know what plans are being put in place to effectively get through all of them. I mean, this took 3 weeks. It could take 4 or 5 weeks in the fall with the amount of voters that are going to come out. So I just wanted to, what I've witnessed, the dedication and commitment to everybody, I was blown away. And I wanted to thank you for your service to our community. And I want to thank Emily and Steve as well. Even prior to the election, I was going to Emily a lot with questions and I needed data and information, and she was tremendous. So thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Can I respond quick if I may?
Yes.
Madam Chair?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so I appreciate the comment. And again, first of all, I want to keep this quick today, move away. But a couple of things I want to say. First of all, again, my first time in this, I'm going to give everyone credit, again, from the board to the borough, fact that I think that anybody who is skeptical about the election process here in Luzerne County shouldn't be. It's extremely efficient. So again, kudos to everybody, especially with some of the challenges we've had with the 117th district. It's a little bit unique. Again, my first 3 months, obviously I came in, been not new to the government here, just new to the elections. And, you know, I came in this with an open mind to be independent, to sit back, see what works, and to also give my suggestions as we move forward. And again, I think most of my comments were going to go, and these are going to be added on to the, I think, June. Some of them will be added on to the June meeting and already. So a couple things. Number one, the whole purpose of Home Rule was to get more people involved in this government. Okay, it's an open, transparent government. We call the ABCs. We want people to be able to be involved in this government, not just retirees, people from all over. Even today, we're here at 10 o'clock in the morning. This meeting does not have to be at 10 o'clock in the morning. It could be at 6 o'clock. Strong argument. More people from the public will be here. It's open. I'm taking time off of my day right now working to be here today. On Wednesday, I did the exact same thing. Nobody in their right mind with a job who wants to participate in this government is going to give up 3 weeks each election, not get paid anything to do this. That's number one. Number two, for as much as I think that our board has done very good, what they have been, we do need to become more efficient. I'm going to keep it general. One thing I learned, did not realize, was the write-ins. And I give all you guys credit for that. Kudos. But I drew the line. 9 o'clock to 4 o'clock, putting in that is not the job of the board. So you could say all the time you put in. It's like going to the gym for 5 hours and not working out. It's about efficiency. So I've already expressed this to the board in private emails. I think that Madam Chair has already even agreed to the fact that we're putting this on the agenda to throw this back to the borough, which brings up another thing. The borough's done a great job. They've done a phenomenal job with what they have. We have to talk, we have to work with Ramilda. We need more people in that office, okay? And I think that what we need to do here as a board is we need to work more with the borough and how we could work together. It's all about becoming more efficient. There's certain things that I think that, and we're going to disagree on this, and I'm going to be general. There's certain things that we do that the borough should do. And there's certain things that, and I think they'll agree to. And that's where we have to come together. And that's where we have to, like, again, one thing, come November, I'm not going to be up here all day during election day. I'm not. I'm going to be out at the polls. I think that we need to work together to have certain board members here, certain times, and certain board members to be at the polls. You're going to learn a lot from what goes at the polls. I went to one poll that day, and I've learned a lot from people coming to me, giving me suggestions that I'm already bringing back to the board. So I think that the point of it is that, listen, we got a group here. I'm committed to it. I'm going to do what I can. If somebody wants to give up 3 weeks of their time without getting paid or not have a job, God bless. But I put a lot of time into this county over the last 12 years. I'm going to continue to do it. I take a lot of pride in it. I'm going to work with the team, do what I can again. And that's my stand. So just so everyone understands the big picture that probably a lot of people haven't seen. So anyway, I appreciate that. Thanks.
I'd just like to respond a little bit. I agree with Mr. Morelli in that there may have been some things that the board has been helping with that could back off on now. But I think that's because now the Election Bureau is in a really good space. There was a lot of turnover for many elections. Since I've been on the board, almost every election, there's been turnover in leadership. And much of the leadership did not even realize, I'm sorry to say, how to even do the write-in process, whereas the board knew how to do it. So the board was doing a lot of helping to get through the write-in process because they recognized, the board recognized the need and stepped in and helped out. I've seen both sides where county employees are brought in to do the inputting and the board just oversees and kind of stands behind them. And when and if there is a standard of practice in place, a written standard of practice that explains to those workers exactly what they should be doing and are to be doing, because as everybody knows, the write-in process is not just inputting write-ins, it's determining ambiguous marks and if they're votes or not. It's determining overvotes and if they're actually overvotes or not. Things the machine is not certain of and sends to the human. So to say that county employees can make these decisions is not correct. But the board oversight is definitely necessary for any type of process. And I've seen both done. And I agree that it could be done by county employees who are trained appropriately to do this with oversight. It has happened, and then it didn't happen. And I think it was mostly because of the turnover. But again, it's in good stead now. When I first came onto the board, there were 5 members and 1 could not make it due to full-time employment. And she was very apologetic to all the other board members the whole time. It was a recent job taken on, and she ended up giving up the position. And with that, it prompted me as chair of the board to write a letter to county council, letting them know that when I noticed that when they asked Board of Election members on the ABC's committee about, can you make monthly meetings or 2 monthly meetings? I realized that one of the biggest part of the Board of Elections is adjudication after an election. And one of their biggest roles is adjudication and the post-election processes. So I asked the county council members, and I sent it to all members at the time, if the ABCs would include in their interview process, asking all those who applied for the Board of Elections, since it's very different than a lot of the other boards, commissions, and authorities, if that would be a problem, that 1 to 2 weeks of full-time, days after election day. And so they do ask that, and board members do, and those who apply do respond if that is a problem or if it's not a problem. Out of fairness to all the other board members who make the commitment to be there, it's important that we all do our part, because it is important. We are making and determining votes for the voters of the county. And I think they're all counting on us to be present for the adjudication process.
But again, Denise, I think, and again, I don't want to get into the weeds here, which I think we should at some point, but not today. Point I'm getting at is that there have been times where everybody has to be involved. First of all, there's 5. We all know you need a majority of 3. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. I trust everyone on this board. You don't need all 5. There've been times when, again, through the process, you're right, you do need to have some people oversee. Doesn't have to be them. Move on with the process, set time aside for the board to come in and review those. You're still going to do everything you can. And that's what my point is that I think we need to break down efficiency. That's how I'm going to continue to use the word efficiency. We are late compared to other counties out there. That's a fact. All right. And it's nice to be tedious, but it's also to the point of questioning how much is overboard. Again, who's going to give up 3 weeks of their job without pay? I mean, when you say put time in, there's time, but who's going to, this isn't a hobby. So I think the fact of we got to continue to work to better. We got to make sure that there's some, that we're being fair to the people who want to do this. If you're retired, and since we're on the subject, there's something else I'm going to bring up too, which we discussed one other time. I'm going to discuss it since we're on the topic of how to make things better. There's some issues out there about biasness, and we have to discuss it in more depth. So I'm just adding that to the agenda in June.
Okay, so I would like to say, first of all, we are late due to litigation. Okay, that is another reason why the media is here. Okay, we are late due to litigation, and I don't want to deliberate because we do have to remember that this is public comment. And I think I would love to hear all the arguments of how we can make our election board greater, better, and we have placed it, Denise has placed it on the agenda, I believe, for June. So it's something that I would like to see. I would like to see what ideas Mr. Morelli comes up with. I also would like to, hear everything that everybody has to say, but first and foremost, I would like to point out it is public comment. Everybody here would like to get back to their regular scheduled programs. And, I think at this point, we've got to be careful not to deliberate at this point in the meeting, but one good election, I do want to say one good election, which we have had plenty in the past few years, one good election does not spell out infallibility. And we need to keep that in mind. We do need to be cautious and moving forward. I am optimistically cautious. Like I am like really excited that we had a good election. But there's still work to be done. And there, as Mr. Morelli has pointed out, there are still things, people that we need in the office. There's still things that we need to do that to make things better. And that doesn't go beyond me. And that's all I have to say on this one.
Anybody else in person who would like to publicly comment, just raise your hand. Go right ahead. State your name and municipality, please.
Audrey Cerniak from Plains Township. First, I'd like to thank everybody involved. This was really a smoothly run election. The Bureau, the board, the IT department, the Office of Law, the Sheriff's Department. Everybody seemed to pull together to get this all done. Basically, though, I would like to say that I don't think anybody appreciates the massive change mail-in voting has brought to this whole election process. Was on the board for a long time, and I was on the board just prior to the mail-in votings coming in. Our meetings for certification, a couple of us would sit down at the Bureau, look over a couple of absentee ballots that might have something not quite right with them, decide to take them or not, and then basically certify the election. I'm not even sure, we didn't really even schedule any certification meetings. We just kind of got together and did it at some point. I think a couple of people were pushing for an actual certification meeting. We did finally schedule one according to Sunshine Law, do that. But then mail-in voting came, and it is just, it's just amazing the amount of really work it takes to make sure those votes are counted properly. We have voting systems. All systems have their limitations. We've had to work around that. It's been a constant learning process for everybody. Basically, the board used to just sit around and do it themselves. We had no process to handle the write-ins that really counted them properly. That had to be developed. It finally was. I know there are certain elections where we did basically supervise Bureau and other county employees and even volunteers to the public inputting all these things, and the board will say, well, yeah, do this, or they gather around, so yeah, that's a vote or not. I think a lot of the stuff where the board is actually doing the inputting and really involved in that came because of a lot of this bipartisan tension that has developed in our politics. And I think maybe we can pull back from that. Maybe boards, maybe there'll be better procedures to develop. But again, this is something that has been continually developing, just to get these things done on time. And we pretty much have been done on time. I don't remember a time when we were running really, really late with things where we haven't gone to management and said, hey, we need resources here. And then all of a sudden you'd have, 10 people from all over the county department saying, well, they just sent it here. What do you want us to do? And it's been done. The only time I think we haven't certified certain races, and there are precedent for that where we haven't certified one race or two race out of the elections, is basically because litigation or the state has said, hold off on this, we have to have recounts or something like that. But it's been a tremendous amount of progress just dealing with this incredibly massive change and just making sure Luzerne County does count the votes properly and everybody gets counted legally, fairly, properly. And I really want to thank everybody involved for this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else in person would like to speak? Doesn't appear that way. There is one person on the Zoom platform. Mark, your hand is raised.
Madam Chair, this is Mark Rebo from Hazleton speaking. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I'd like to thank Solicitor Molino for offering that clarification about the segregating of an individual race from the entire primary election. Much appreciated. As far as these mail-in ballots for this election and previous elections, Madam Chair, I would remind you, and you would know this all too well, that when the law for the Act 77 was put into place, there was really no definitive process other than a skeleton of a process to, like a boilerplate type of template. that was presented by the state legislature. And it was in the middle of the COVID pandemic that this was put out to the 67 counties, boards of election and bureaus of election to handle. And I can empathize with the bureaus and the boards of election of all 67 counties, including Luzerne County, because of the fact that they did not really, the state did not really give you guys or any other counties the ability to provide input to the Department of State or to the legislature at the time. Now, as you know, Madam Chair, there's a bipartisan, bicameral committee that was put into place after the 2020 election. And it's the suggestions that were given by the counties and by the Department of State is now kind of in limbo because the legislature has other things to do. So I can attest to this being on the redevelopment authority for the 67 million or for $55 million, excuse me, of the infrastructure money. There was no process in place. We were left to, the redevelopment authority was left to do the process. So I can understand the board and bureau's problems over the years. And that's why I've tried to assist and also the board and the bureau and also the state in trying to provide suggestions, as well as yourself giving suggestions to the state. I think that would help in the process. And to finally address Mr. Morelli's comments, I would agree with him. And I'm glad that, and I like Mr. Walsh said, I too know Mr. Morelli for many years, since the beginning of home rule. And I'm glad that he came around to his comment, what he just said, which was people have work schedules, personal schedules, and there needs to be a refinement of the procedures of the Bureau and the board in terms of how this is done. And I would give him a suggestion and the board a suggestion, which is Title 25. Title 25 regulates all the boards and bureaus of elections throughout the 67 counties. And I think that as far as, and I know Mr. Morelli feels passionate about this, but the Home Rule Charter, when it was drafted, did not look into the possible conflicts with Title 25, the election law. So I would hope that the Government Study Commission and the board can offer suggestions to the study commission in terms of fixing any conflicts that causes the dysfunction. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I just want to confirm what Mr. Rabo just said, in that there weren't a lot of processes in place when mail-in ballots were instituted by Act 77. But since then, and I've seen it since I've come onto the board since April of 2021, the Election Bureau has put together and now does have standards of practice and policies in place for procedures. They've gotten there, and they've done it's been challenging doing that with a lot of turnover, but now they're in a good space. And the board has done that as well with all the processes the board has to do during the adjudication process. And there are processes in place. There are agendas in place for the adjudication processes. I'd also like to remind everyone that when the Home Rule Charter was created, there were no mail ballots. And that, as Ms. Cerniak stated, changed so much in the adjudication process, the post-election adjudication process, significantly. And so it's very different from when the Home Rule Charter was created, the role of the Board of Elections. Any other online? I don't see any hands up, and there are no phone lines. So with that,
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Ms. Fusaro. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Morelli. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? None heard. Meeting is adjourned at 10:35 a.m. Thank you, everyone. Please turn off your microphones.